Coming up today, looking for a fresh start, President Park Geun-hye meets the new leadership of Korea's ruling party. She's expected to call on them to support her policy initiatives. Team Korea adds a fourth gold to its medal tally on day 5 of the Rio Olympics as marksman Jin Jong-oh wins the men's 50-meter pistol event. First Korea Central Bank holds the key rate steady at 1.25% for the second straight month as concerns linger over a possible rate hike in the US. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's noon on Thursday, the 11th of August. You're tuned in to our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Broom. Our top story this afternoon, President Park Geun-hye has just started a luncheon meeting with the new leaders of the ruling Saenuri Party, where she's expected to ask for their cooperation in carrying out her policy initiatives. The party's new leader, Lee Jang-hyun, along with the 5 newly elected Supreme Council members, are visiting the presidential office of Cheongwa-dae just 2 days after winning their posts at the party's convention. President Park will likely call for their support in passing economy-related bills and discuss ways to improve people's day-to-day lives. She'll also highlight the need for national unity against North Korea's nuclear and missile threats. He formerly served as President Park's senior political affairs, then press secretary, raising hope for greater cooperation between the top office and the ruling party during the remaining 18 months of the president's term. Staying with politics, and the National Assembly Speaker and the floor leaders of the 3 main political parties will meet on Friday to discuss the government's supplementary budget proposal. Ruling Saenuri Party floor leader Jung Jin-sok said Thursday the extra budget bill needs parliamentary approval by August 19th in order for ministries to execute the fiscal programme by the end of this month. The ruling party is hoping to reach an agreement with the opposition parties to meet that deadline. The opposition parties, however, disagree and say the government should deal with other political issues first, like the deployment of the THAAD missile defense system. The government submitted its plan for a $10 billion budget supplement last month to invigorate the economy amid faltering exports and slowing domestic demand. The Bank of Korea has held its key interest rate steady at 1.25%. It was a widely expected decision as the Korean economy faces lingering uncertainties both at home and abroad. Hwang Ji-hye has more.
Following its monthly monetary policy meeting on Thursday, Korea's central bank took a wait-and-see approach in August. It kept its key rate unchanged at 1.25%, standing pat on the historic low rate for the second straight month. The central bank made a surprise move in June, lowering the key rate by 0.25 percentage point. Market analysts had been expecting the BOK's decision this month, as the central bank wants to see whether the government's stimulus package helps bolster the economy that's in doldrums. The measure originally laid out in June includes an extra budget worth roughly $10 billion. Uncertainties also linger over snowballing household debt, while concerns are mounting that the government's corporate restructuring drive and anti-corruption law due to come into force next month could hurt consumption towards the end of this year. And conditions abroad are far from rosy. The central bank has its hands full with a possible rate hike on the cards in the US and Britain's decision to leave the European Union. But facing growing calls for more easing, eyes are now focused on the central bank's next move. The Korean economy grew in the 0% range for the third straight quarter in the April to June period from a quarter earlier, fueling concerns Korea is stumbling into a low-growth rut. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
Now, North Korea has reportedly sold fishing rights along the northern limit line in the East Sea to China. The money from the deal is said to flow directly into the coffers of the cash-strapped Kim Jong-un regime. Kwon So-ah reports.
In addition to last month's confirmation by South Korea's National Intelligence Service that North Korea is selling fishing licenses to China near the northern limit line in the West Sea, It's been revealed that the same goes for the NLL in the East Sea. Seoul-based Yonhap News Agency reports that intelligence and government sources say analysis of increased Chinese vessels in South Korean waters shows around 2,500 Chinese fishing boats operate in the East and West Sea through the deal with Pyongyang. Last month, South Korea's intelligence agency reported to the National Assembly that North Korea sold rights worth $30 million to around 1,500 boats. Around $75 million is estimated to flow into the regime annually from the sale of fishing rights, according to a source. It also said Pyongyang sold its fishing rights through third-party trade firms, but it plans to sell them directly in the future. Officials say the hard currency is funneled directly into the Kim Jong-un regime, which is said to be struggling financially due to tough international sanctions imposed for the North's nuclear and missile provocations. The North Korean leader was known to have encouraged increased fishery production for years to boost the local economy, but providing China with its rich fishing grounds suggests Kim's priority is on securing funds instead of improving the livelihoods of the North Korean people. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Now, an expert in the United States says China and Russia should welcome South Korea's upcoming deployment of the THAAD missile defense system as it contributes to deterring the proliferation of nuclear weapons. Richard White, who is a researcher at the Washington-based Hudson Institute, says the deployment will give South Korea and Japan less reason to come up with their own defensive measures to North Korea's threats. White says Washington's sanctions and diplomacy have failed to stop Pyongyang from developing its nuclear missile programs, and a decision by Seoul or Tokyo to acquire nuclear weapons for their national defense would trigger a new Cold War. His comments come as China and Russia, to a lesser extent, have expressed opposition to Seoul's decision on the THAAD deployment. An annual report from the US State Department says religious freedom does not exist in North Korea as people who engage in religious activities are beaten, arrested, tortured and even executed. Oh Jang-hee has the details.
Genuine religious freedom continues to be, quote, non-existent in North Korea. The U.S. State Department says in its latest International Religious Freedom Report released Wednesday that the regime has continued its harsh treatment of people engaged in religious practices, punishing them through arrest, beatings, torture, and execution. Believers are vulnerable to persecution because they're considered among the least loyal to the regime. The regime has strict regulations on religion, requiring approvals for construction of religious buildings or holding ceremonies. North Koreans suspected of contacting South Koreans or foreign missionaries, especially those in China, and those who were caught with Bibles and other religious materials, have reportedly been executed or imprisoned in labor camps. The report estimates there are 80,000 to 120,000 political prisoners in North Korea, some of whom are in prison camp systems in remote areas for religious reasons. Although the regime guarantees freedom of religion in its constitution, the North's deeply rooted ideology of juche, or self-reliance, suppresses the expression of individual thought, belief, and behavior. The U.S. has designated North Korea as a, quote, country of particular concern since 2001 for its severe violations of religious freedom. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
The Emergency Committee for South Korean companies at the shuttered inter-Korean Kaesong Industrial Complex has again requested to enter the factory park. The committee says it needs to discuss how to deal with the assets left behind in the north and check their equipment. However, South Korea's Unification Ministry says it will not grant them permission, adding a visit would be inappropriate at a time when such strong sanctions are imposed on North Korea. This is the third time the committee has requested to enter the complex since June. The committee is also calling for a special law to be legislated, as they are requesting some $1.4 billion in compensation to cover losses stemming from the closure. Now, the world's billionaires are holding over $1.7 trillion in cash, the highest since record-keeping began back in 2010. According to the Wealth X Billionaire Census, nearly 2,500 billionaires worldwide keep 22.2% of their net worth in cash. Their combined combined cash pile is roughly the size of Brazil's GDP. The findings are in line with a study released by UBS last month. The Swiss banking giant said super wealthy Americans hold about a fifth of their assets in cash, with more reconsidering their investments due to economic uncertainties related to the upcoming presidential election there. The Wealth X report pointed out that billionaires may be waiting for stock and asset valuations to return to bargain levels. Team Korea has scooped its fourth gold medal of the Rio Olympics. Victory came thanks to a steady pair of hands, marksman Jin Jong-ho, who has written himself into the history books with his win in Brazil. Let's turn it over to our Ian Shin, who is following all the action for us. Shin, these Olympics just keep getting better and better.
I could not agree with you more there, Mark. Aside from the medal-winning moments for Team Korea, Day 5 truly gave viewers more of what they watched the Olympics for. A new Olympic record was set in shooting, and a 42-year-old mother of three claims her third consecutive gold medal in cycling. Starting with the Korean veterans' golden moment, here's our Park Jong-won with more.
Veteran sharpshooter Jin Jong-ho has made Olympic and Korean sports history. He became the world's first shooter ever, male or female, to win a single event at 3 Olympics in a row, either summer or winter. So far in his career, Jin has won 4 Olympic gold and 2 silvers, bringing him level with former archer Kim Sun-young for the most Olympic medals by a Korean athlete. Jin claimed victory in the men's 50-meter pistol event, scoring 193.7 in the final game, setting an Olympic record in the process. But getting to the winner's podium was a nail-biting ride. In fact, Jin almost failed to reach the final round. According to the rules, the shooter with the lowest aggregate score is eliminated after the 8th shot, and had it not been for Russian Vladimir Goncharov's faltering in his last remaining shots, the outcome would have been quite different. What's more, Jin at one point fired a shot way off bullseye, getting just 6.6 out of the top score of 10.9. But despite the huge emotional and mental burden, Jin rose up to the challenge and displayed discipline to make an electric comeback. Park Jong-hong, Arirang News.
More exciting news for Team Korea, this time on the football pitch. Scoring the game's only goal in the second half, the nation has secured their passage into the knockout stages. Defeating the 2012 London Olympics football champion Mexico 1-0 in their final group stage match, South Korea is now set to play against Honduras on Saturday evening local time. Also from the same group, Germany advanced as well after they thrashed Fiji 10-0. And let's go back to medal counting, shall we? Team Korea could add 2 more medals on Wednesday in men's judo and men's fencing. World number 1 Gwak Dong-han won bronze in the 90-kilo class. Despite an earlier defeat by an opponent from Georgia in the semifinal match, the 24-year-old first-time Olympian claimed victory against Marcus Niemann from Sweden through a swift ippon. Also triumphing in a bronze medal bout was Kim Jong-han in the men's individual saber. Kim defeated Iran's Mojtaba Abedini 15-8 to capture Korea's second medal in men's fencing, following Park Sang-young's gold in epee on Tuesday. Now, in the middle of all the festivities and among so many medalists is a mother who is an inspiration to many. American cyclist Kristin Armstrong claimed her 3rd consecutive road time trial gold just in time for her 43rd birthday. Here's what she has to say about age.
I think that for so long we've been told that we should be finished at a certain age, and I think that there's a lot of athletes out there that are actually showing that that's not true. For all the moms out there, I hope that this was a very inspiring day.
Motivating the crowds and encouraging millions, her strong return highlighted the true spirit of the Olympics. After retiring to start a family and after fairly recent multiple hip surgeries, Armstrong made another comeback last year to yet again prove her golden caliber. She powered through the almost 30-kilometer rain-soaked course to claim first place, and the hard-earned, much-deserved gold, perhaps, is the best birthday present she could have asked for. Those are the highlights from Wednesday. Now let's take a look at the current medal standings and see what's on the next schedule.
Well, that's all we have for now. I'm Mark Broom. Thank you as always for watching. We'll have more news for you at 3 p.m. Korea time. So until then, goodbye.